All right, welcome back, everybody. This is Luke, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about marathon long runs. I want to talk specifically about 16-mile long run and a couple things about that, but mainly how it does work. I want to go into it a little bit more because I think there's a lot of I don't know. I'm looking at I'm actually looking at Hal Higdon's website right now and looking at the advanced plan and I think a lot of people come to us or they find the book, the Hanson's Marathon Method through, maybe doing Hal Higdon at first, or, it's a lot of times it's lumped into those brackets. And I'm looking at his advanced plan right now, like I said, and it's an interesting plan, to say the least. And I don't want to bash on Hal because I mean he's helped a ton of people run a marathon. But I just, I think I just feel like I end up having to explain myself because it's not the 16 mile. What the Hansen plan is so much different than what Hal Higdon's plan is at a bigger level, at a 30,000 foot view. Where I'm looking at it now, it's similar in some ways, but then it's so different in other ways. So yeah. Anyway, I want to talk about that stuff a little bit, and because the long run for the marathon's always the big discussion, right? It's always what everybody focuses on, especially more recreational type athletes, and I think it needs to, it's a lot of times on our end, it's convincing a person that they can go 16 miles, and that they'll be okay. And I think that it's a hard sell sometimes, right? So it's sometimes they're just downright defiant and they're just not going to do 16. Um, and now I think I kind of understand a little bit why, just looking at other plans that are readily available and very popular on the World Wide Web. So I want to talk a little bit about that. I'm not going to hash a ton of things at length just because we talked about it at length. I have blogs on it. If you've read Hanson's Marathon Method books, we have entire chapters on it. But there are certain rules that we lay out, that I learned from Kevin and Keith, and that I apply to the vast majority of my athletes. So, so first of all, people get stuck on the 16-mile aspect of it, and I even did a little bit there too. But at the end of the day, it's not even really about whether it's straight up 16 or 20 miler. It's more about just keeping the long run within certain guidelines that will allow for other aspects of training to occur. So in other words, we're not putting all our eggs in the marathon basket. We're not putting it into the long run basket, right? So we're going to rely on other things than just a 20-mile long run that's going to make sure that we're ready to go for the day. We want to share fairly equally the importance of marathon paced running and running faster than marathon pace. For our athletes, we want to keep long runs less than 30% of their weekly volume, and really under 3.5 hours in time that it takes them to complete the long run. And me personally, I'm a fan of faster long runs. If you've purchased a plan from us or you're involved in any of our discussions, I don't normally prescribe easy paces for long runs. I prescribe what we have as the long run pace, which is maybe starting out at easy pace, but working down to a pretty good clip towards, approaching marathon pace, getting within, 30 seconds a mile of marathon pace. So I am personally a fan of that. I think you have to treat it as not an LSD, a long, slow distance run, but something that you're going to be getting after. Now, if you're new to marathon running or new to training in general, no, probably not. Now you're probably gonna do that, but it's more about covering the ground and getting used to building that overall endurance. But if you're an experienced runner, I would really like to see those runs get faster, those long runs get faster. I would argue that like I said, so it's not really about 16 or 20. It's really more that with Kevin and Keith's plan, and then just looking at who is using that plan on average, 16 miles fits the vast majority of people, right? So 16 miles for the vast majority of people using the plans, not my plan, Kevin and Keith's plan, is that they're fitting into that 3.5 hour range, and they're keeping that overall volume pretty close to that 25 to 30%, weekly volume. And I'm looking at, so just because I'm looking at Higdon's plan right now. So I'm looking at his advanced plan. And so, every week you basically fit the entirety of the plan into 4 days a week, right? So you do something on Thursday, you take Friday off, Saturday you run at marathon pace, and then Sunday you're doing a long run. So that's four things of substance in 3 days. And so then, of course, you have to take, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday to recover from that, right? And so to me, that's digging a hole that a lot of people can't get out of. I feel like you end up surviving the training and not necessarily thriving under the training, although I'd say people would argue that with us too. But I think the most people who are successful with our plans actually feel much stronger than they think that they would. But it's just an interesting thing. And so I do kind of think it's a little bit like ours, because if you look at our Saturday, you have a longer easy run, and then you have your long run on Sunday. So you are putting a lot of mileage in over the weekend. But with Hal, you're putting a 10-mile run at pace, and if you're warming up and cooling down, you're talking anywhere from 12 to 14 miles plus 20 miles on Sunday on his week 11 of this advanced one plan. So that's a lot of mileage over the weekend. And then you look at that is going to be, so that's just at face value, that's 30 miles. So then you're talking about 19 miles for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So yeah, that's well over 50% of your weekly volume right there. So I just feel like you're putting a lot of stuff in a short window. And this kind of goes to what I'm going to talk about as far as the super compensation cycle and what that actually means. So just going into that, I want to talk about. I do have a couple blogs. One is how am I going to make it 26.2 at this pace, and the other one is stress recovery principles, which goes into the idea of super compensation a little bit. And actually, if you're in the Run Club, I am going to do a team talk on this February 8th, I believe. I think that's the date, Wednesday or Thursday next week. So be on the lookout for that. If you're in the Run Club or the Run Club light levels or a coached athlete, you have access to all of that. But to me, the super compensation goes into that idea of how the shorter long run can be more successful, right? And so in terms of super compensation, specifically for the long run, I want to first go back to the tempo run on Thursday. A tempo run is going to take anywhere from 24 to 30 hours to go through the immediate decline in performance, the ability to recover, and then super compensation. So I do have a picture of the super compensation phase. If you're watching the video, you should be seeing that slide now. But you have phase one, where you did the workout, and you're in that dashed line across the horizontal is your baseline fitness and time. You do the workout. That solid line is basically a representation of your fitness. It automatically goes down. You're not going to be able to perform. You have a decline in performance to a certain amount of time, and then you reach a point where things start to recover. Your fitness slopes back up, and then over time will actually go past what your baseline level is, and then come back down to that baseline. And this is over the course of, in the short term, when you're talking about a single workout, you're talking anywhere in the course of a day or two to maybe 3 or 4 days. And so that's what we have. That's when I'm referring to time frames, that's what I'm talking about right here. So if you do your run in the morning, that means going back to that, say 24 to 30 hours to recover from a longer tempo. So when we're talking about time, we get to 8, 9, 10 mile tempo runs, 24 to 30 hours to go through the immediate decline in performance and then start the recovery phase and get into really more to that baseline level. So if you do your runs in the morning, that means by Friday morning, if you did your tempo on Thursday, by Friday morning to maybe sometime in Friday afternoon, you've pretty much reached that full recovery phase. And then by Saturday morning, you have reached some super compensation. You might be just below, right at, or just above that baseline level. But you're there, right? You're back to where your regular levels. However, on a week you have a 16-mile long run, you usually have an 8 to 10 mile run before that. So a run like that is probably going to take 12 to 24 hour range to recover from. So basically what I'm saying is you do that with tempo on Thursday, you are you have an immediate decline in performance, and it takes some time to recover from that. So that by the time you get to that Saturday morning, you're probably going to be right about that recovered phase in terms of glycogen replenishment and all that good stuff. And then you are going to be at that baseline or slightly below that baseline. If you're tired, if cumulative fatigue is working, you're probably actually going to be a little bit below that baseline. And then you do the 16-mile long run, and that's going to take you another 24, that's going to be 26 miles, 24 to 26 miles within about a 24 to 26 hour period. So within just about a day, you've run about a marathon, right? And so my point with that is that you do that bigger, easy run on Saturday. You dig a hole, right, from a fitness line. You see you have that immediate decline in performance. You start to come back on the recovery phase. So you haven't dipped that line hasn't completely fallen off a cliff with that longer, easy run, but it has decreased quite a bit. But then you start the recovery phase, you're going to be probably just below that initial starting point, right? Your baseline level. And then you do the long run and it goes back down again, right? But the fact that you've spread that out over 2 days, you kind of have a down, back up, down again, and then you can come back up, and then you have all of Sunday, Monday to recover from that and then get ready for whatever you have on Tuesday. At that point of the schedule, you're going to be in the strength phase of the plan. But if you did just a 20 miler, especially looking at Hal Higdon's plan, this is exactly why it would be tough to do something on Tuesday on this plan, because I'm looking at, so if I did a 45-minute tempo, I'm going to be in a pretty big decline. Yeah, I'm going to be able to rest on Saturday, but then I'm coming right back Friday, and then I'm coming right back Saturday doing a 10-mile tempo run. There's no way on earth I'm going to be recovered. I'm probably actually going to be at the bottom of that valley of that big decline by the time I start the 20-miler. So I'm really digging a hole on Saturday, and I'm not recovering from that. And I'm digging it even deeper on Sunday, right? So in our case, we are digging a hole on Saturday. Our we're going to see a decline in performance, right? And this is really why it goes back to where Kevin says this is really about running this last 16 miles of the marathon and not the first 16 miles, because you're not fresh going into it. You're tired, but you're not overly tired, right? Like you've got that tired of having a fairly long, easy run. For a lot of people, if it's a 10-mile run and you're running 8-minute pace, well, then you're talking an hour 20 run, and then you're doubling that with a 3-hour run on the next day. There you go. You're accumulating that roughly 4 hours that you'd be doing for the marathon in about a 24-hour period, but it's not going to have that such a detrimental effect that it would be if it was just a straight up 20, and then you're really going into depletion. You're not recovering at all. You dig that hole so deep that you would need 3 or 4 days to recover from that. And that's to me what really makes it work. You are accumulating that mileage over a short period of time, but it's kind of spaced out enough where you can dig the hole, recover a little bit, dig the hole deeper on the long run, but then you still have time to come back and recover well the rest of Sunday into Monday, and then do your workout on Tuesday. And then you can go. And that's why we can actually fit more over a 7-day period, more mileage, more volume of intensity, SOS, if you would say, those types of things. We can do those things, and you're getting more balance in the training. So what I will see with some of the athletes I coach is that they'll want to keep the long run Sunday, but they'll want Saturday completely off for whatever reasons. And so to me, that takes away some of the effectiveness of doing the 16-mile run. Because I think what makes that 16-mile work is that longer, easy run the day before, because you're kind of putting some junk in your legs. You're a little bit tired going into that long run, but not so tired that it's going to be incredibly slow run. And so I think in that case, you're better off moving your long run to Saturday and then just taking Sunday off, because then you can do the tempo Thursday, run easy Friday to recover, and then Saturday go into your long run. Still have that. You're going to have stuff in your legs because that tempo run's not going to be completely out of your legs by the time you get to that long run if you do it on a Saturday. And then just take Sunday off, and then you're kind of back on there. You have Sunday off, Monday to easy run, and then Tuesday you're back on your schedule. But it's still not as crammed in as I think I'm looking at. And I really, it just seems like a lot of work for the average person to do over a 4-day span. Three workouts over a 4-day span, and 4 meaty workouts, or 3 meaty workouts over 4 days. That's pretty substantial. But in any case, the last part I want to go into is whether or not 16 or 20 is the magic number. Truth is, like I said, neither one are magic numbers. And my advice for people who are new, if you say you bought the book, whatever, and you want to cheat that long run up, which I see a lot of times, people accidentally get lost and it turns out to be, I just got lost and it just happened to turn out to be 20 miles. Yeah, seen that before. But I think you just have to be careful. It's already a pretty hard schedule. I think if you talk to anybody in that Facebook group or people who've used the plan before, it's not an easy plan, even though the long run's only 16. So I would say your chances are you're probably going to be doing a lot more work, because I don't know how many times I've heard people say, I've already done an intermediate plan here and there, so I just went to the advanced plan. I was like, oh my gosh, it was way harder than I thought it would be. So it's hard work, right? And so I think you have to just kind of take it easy on there, and not cheat things up. But if you've been through the plan and you feel like you're truly maxed out at what you can accomplish at that level, so at the advanced plan, you're peaking out roughly 60 miles a week, right? And so if you're there and you've done the plan 3 or 4 times and you've really just kind of plateaued out where you're at, and then sure, bump up your long run to 18 at 60 miles a week, which is where you'd be at peak. By the definition I gave, 18 miles would put you at the top end of that range. And if you're at 65, I think it's like 19.5 would be in the percentage, but you can round up to 20. That's fine. But I think you have to be in a position where you've been through the plan a few times, and you really truly feel like you've maxed out where you can be at the base level of the plan, right? And then you can start making adjustments. I think what's key is just understanding what you're doing and why you're doing it, and try to look at things from the big picture view, and then narrow it down to what you really want to dial in on. So in this case, the long run, right? So from the big picture view, we're looking at, okay, we have something pretty significant on Tuesday, pretty significant on Thursday. Saturday is not a cakewalk, and then we have a long run on Sunday. So cheating up the long run to match what other people will tell you that they need to do, but not understanding where they're at in the whole terms of the schedule. I think then you say, well, okay, but I'm doing all this work before. Maybe I just back off and follow the plan. And I'll tell you what, like most of the criticism that I see when people talk about Hanson's is that the immediate thing they go to, right, is the 16-mile long run. And as soon as they do that, I can pretty much tell you that they've never looked at the plan in its entirety, and they haven't seen everything that you're doing leading up to those runs, and they haven't looked at what your total volume is, and they haven't looked at what work you're actually doing for 18 weeks. And so usually when people just bash on the 16-mile run, I can tell you right away that it's not something that they've looked at in the entirety. They just focused on the 16 and not everything else you were doing before that, or really try to understand why it's like that. Or, they've never really truly listened to what Kevin and Keith have said and what I said in the book, based on what Kevin and Keith have said, that it's not about 16 or 20. It's about what fits where you're at. And I think if you look at Daniel's running formula, who's also a big influence for a lot of athletes and a lot of coaches, he specifically says in his long run for the marathon, right? Like it's pretty similar guidance. And he's just basically like, listen, if you can only, if your criteria only allows for a 15-mile long run, well, then it's a 15-mile long run, right? And so you kind of have to work your way up to it. But in any case, I think my point with this one is just really recognizing that the 16-mile long run, when Kevin and Keith are saying that it's really about the last 16 miles of the race, not the first 16 miles of the race, that's what they're referring to, is because of what you're doing Thursday, which is, pretty much out of your legs by the time you get to Saturday. But then you're digging that whole Saturday, coming out of it a little bit, and then digging it deeper on Sunday. which allows you to not dig it as deep, not have the immediate effect of just drastically digging a hole that now you've got to get out of. You either have to take, like in Hal's plan, you either have to take Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday pretty easy if you just load up over the weekend. Whereas if you are moderate on that but still accumulating the mileage, you can put that junk in your legs but still recover it for the next week, right? Because it's really about what you add on week after week after week, right? And so if you space that out just enough, you're going to be able to add more overtime, and you're going to be able to do more overtime. But it's all about really spreading it out and allowing that super compensation to take effect, and then knowing when you can push and when you have to back off, right? And so with us, I think it's more about just getting people to accumulate that volume over the weekend. Saturday being a longer run, more time on your feet, and then you finish that time on your feet on Sunday, but it still allows you to get after it a little bit more on the pace. Because I want to bet a lot of people who run that Saturday pace run on Hal's plan is that long run on Sunday's pretty conservative, right? I don't think there's a lot of pushing on there. I think a lot of it's just trying to get through. Whereas with us, and this is just a difference, I'm not saying one is better than the other, but I think for us, it's been really successful. If you're fairly moderate on that pace on Saturday, like I said, one, you're putting that time on your feet. You're putting an hour plus for most people on your feet, maybe even close to an hour and a half for some people. And then you're coming back and running another 3 hours on Sunday, but you're able to do it at I bet your average paces are pretty close to what you're doing by a tempo run on Saturday and then a long run on Sunday. So yeah, I just want you to think about that as you move on. As you think about the plans you're doing, think about how you're approaching your long runs on the weekend. If it were me, just to wrap this up, I think that if it were me, you take the easy run Saturday, you make it an easy to moderate run. You put your hour to hour 15, hour 20 in, and then you recover a little bit from that. And then I would use the 16 miler as a run you kind of get after a little bit. No, you're not averaging marathon pace, but you're averaging, if you're averaging 30, 45 seconds per mile for the run, you start out, a minute and a half slower and then work it down to like 30 seconds slower than marathon pace per mile. You're going to average a pretty quick long run. And I think that you're going to get a lot more out of that than just trying to survive a big 20 miler and a big workout on Saturday too. So I think that's where we're at. I think that's why the 16-mile run works, especially for the recreational athlete or a person who is just kind of moving into that bigger mileage overall. I think it's a good way to accommodate all of that and still adapt and still grow as a marathoner. So hopefully that helps you out. Kind of gives you some insight to why we're doing what we're doing. I think that's always important to understanding. And then once you understand, it's easier to comply with what the schedule is telling you to do because you have the reasoning now you have the reasoning in hand of why we prescribe something that we've prescribed. So in any case, hopefully that helps you out, and I will talk to you later. All right, see you.